Dr. Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate my colleague Mika Whaitiri in having this bill drawn and commend this bill as a very important piece of legislation. In her contribution to the House, Mika Whaitiri described this bill as being 7 very simple but very important words. And contrary to the contribution from the previous speaker, the chair of the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, this will not fundamentally change the purpose of the EEZ legislation. Rather, Mr. Speaker, what this legislation does is clarify what the purpose should be. That it shows the difference in terms of the political wins, perhaps, of what two members' bill can do. Because actually, Mr. Simpson, in his initial contribution on this bill, I thought was very respectful and very congratulatory and understood the purpose of what Ms Whaitiri was trying to do. Because, Mr. Speaker, what Mr. Simpson argued in his previous contribution, if I remember correctly, was that there were other pieces of legislation, largely the RMA and the Climate Change Response Act, that provided the, I think he put it, the definitional functionality that was required under this bill. Well, Mr. Speaker, what this bill that we have before us here today does is provides clarity. It provides some certainty around what it is that this independent and politically neutral body of the Environment Protection Agency, the kind of criteria in which they should be making their decisions about what the right decisions are. And all this bill seeks to do is to say that the environment should be front and centre of that decision making. It in no way undermines the political neutrality, it in no way undermines the independence, but what it does is what this Parliament is meant to do, Mr. Speaker, is provide guidance to an agency around how to make its decisions. Very clear criteria that does put the care of our environment front and centre. And Mr. Speaker, in many ways this is symbolic legislation to make sure we enshrine in our legislation the fact that the environment has to be at the fore of something that the Environment Protection Agency is making its decision on. But, Mr. Speaker, in the last few weeks we have reasoned exactly why it is that we need legislation such as this. We've seen something as important as the marine protection areas that have historically been under the guidance of the Department of Conservation taken away from that body and that minister and handed over for the Minister for the Environment, with absolutely no obligation that those areas won't fall under the jurisdiction of the primary legislation of which this member's bill is seeking to amend with this amendment. Could it be because there's a particular minister that isn't trusted to shepherd through legislation of that kind of importance? Or could it be that this is signalling a change from this government in how they intend to view the very important marine protection areas that we simply need to get in place and are going to be coming very soon? And, Mr. Speaker, the other objections that Mr. Simpson put up in his initial speech, I thought, were very simple objections that I think it would do well for the government to support this bill to Select Committee to see and for us to examine these measures and see what can be done. Because what we have seen throughout the history, not only of the primary legislation of which this is seeking to amend, but about the 3 or 4 other pieces of amending legislation that has had to sit alongside the EEZ legislation, is it has been the Select Committees that have come in and actually saved the day on very poorly drafted legislation. This is an exception to EEZ amending legislation in that it's very well drafted and it's a very well crafted piece of legislation, unlike the offerings we have seen from the government. And, Mr. Speaker, I think I would ask government members, this is a very simple piece of legislation. All it does is seek to insert 7 very simple but very important words that clarify exactly what it is that we want our Environment Protection Agency to be basing its decisions on. And that, Mr. Speaker, is putting the environment first. Thank you.
Good speech.